Peace be with you. I knew I'd get a few and with your spirit responses from any good Catholic, just instinctually responds to certain things that we hear. And sometimes we forget that every part of our Mass, virtually every part, is based in the Bible. And sometimes we say things without even realizing what we're saying. Peace be with you are the first words heard from Christ on several occasions on the day he rose from the dead. Our gospel reading takes place the evening of Easter Sunday. We know that early in the morning that Mary Magdalene discovered the empty tomb and ran to inform the disciples. And on the way, she met Christ. And his first words to her that day, "Do not be afraid." Then we hear about the two disciples who were on the road to Emmaus, who were conversing with Christ in the afternoon, but they did not know it was him until he broke bread, and then he vanished. And he vanished because he was now present to them in the bread. And that is where our gospel begins today. The two disciples from the road to Emmaus have now joined the other disciples and are gathered together, likely behind locked doors. Their fear and anxiety and uncertainty were likely at an all-time high. Then Jesus appears to them and says, "Peace be with you. Why are you troubled?" Jesus comes to them in the midst of their chaos, and he's asking why they are afraid. Now, they're likely afraid because they were worried that they too may be killed by the Romans. They're probably likely worried that they think he's a ghost and he may be coming back to punish them for denying him and abandoning him. But instead, Christ comes to bring them peace. He ate and explained the scriptures to them in a whole new light. Their grieving turned into great joy. Now, if we fast forward a few days to our first reading from the Acts of the Apostles, we hear Peter. Peter, who denied knowing Jesus out of fear, is suddenly a brand new person. He has clearly taken Jesus' words to heart, and he is no longer afraid. Instead, he has a clear understanding of his new role to boldly proclaim the teachings of Jesus. Jesus rising from the dead proves that he is God. In our reading, Peter is preaching to the Jewish leaders and followers. This is one of the first sermons ever given by the first pope of the church. Peter challenges them. You denied the Holy One and asked that a murderer be released. But the purpose of his sermon was not to judge them. It was to teach and to compassionately encourage the Jewish listeners. He acknowledged that they acted out of ignorance, and he encourages them to repent and to be converted so that their sins may be forgiven. His message was one of love and desire to be reconciled with God. Many Jews and many Gentiles were converted, and the Catholic Church was quickly establishing its roots. Peter and many others moved from great sorrow and uncertainty to total confidence and joy in their new mission in life. We all face sorrows and hardships in our lives. Medical issues, financial challenges, relationships that may appear to be broken or strained. Moments when we can be very sad, troubled, and terrified, just as the early Christians were in our readings today. Many of us today are troubled and anxious, wondering how absolute truths can be twisted, and when we talk about them, we're criticized as being wrong. During these confusing times, Christ is with us and Christ is in us, asking that we not be afraid, but rather that peace reside within us. It is when we are most afraid that Christ wants us to give our fears totally to him. This is difficult and unnatural for many of us, but we need to humbly trust in Jesus. Christ wants us to enjoy a peace that much of the world does not have, a peace based upon our trust and love of God. Jesus never promised us that life would be easy. but he does tell us, do not be afraid. This is the most repeated commandment in the Bible. And Jesus is not suggesting that we try not to be afraid. He is commanding us, do not be afraid. With so many situations constantly arising in our life that give us reason for fear, it is not a coincidence that this commandment is repeated so often. Now, in a few minutes, we'll turn to each other and say, peace be with you, just as Christ said to his friends. And as we greet each other, let's be grateful and confident that Christ is with each of us. But let us also recognize that some of us here may be in the midst of sadness or chaos and are seeking comfort. Shalom and peace be with each of you today and every day of your life.